In 2011, Elon Musk thought BYD was a joke. But today, no one is laughing. BYD isn't just a car company anymore. It's a global industrial monster. This is the story of how a battery chemist from Shenzhen built an empire that terrified the West. In 1995, Shenzhen was a land of giants, but Wang Chuanfu was a nobody. A brilliant chemist with a secure government job, he did the unthinkable. He quit. With 2.5 million yuan borrowed from his cousin, BYD was born in a broken workshop. But the challenge was impossible. The battery market was a high-tech fortress guarded by Japanese titans like Sony and Sanyo. They had multi-million-dollar robots. Wang had nothing but empty pockets. But then, he found a loophole. He realized that while robots were precise, they were expensive. So he did something crazy. He broke down the assembly line into hundreds of simple steps and hired thousands of migrant workers. This was the birth of human-powered automation. It wasn't high-tech, but it was unstoppable. By 2003, BYD was the king of batteries. But Wang Chuanfu had a secret dream that terrified his investors, cars. When he announced the acquisition of a failing state-owned automaker, the market reacted with horror. Investors panicked. His phone rang non-stop with angry calls from people telling him to stop this madness. In just 2 days, BYD's stock price crashed by 30%. Over $1 billion in market value vanished into thin air. Everyone told him he was making the biggest mistake of his life. But Wang didn't blink. He wasn't looking at the stock chart. He was looking at the next 20 years. He said, "I'm building cars for the future, not for the stock market." He wasn't just building cars. He was building the future of energy. In the global auto industry, vertical integration was long considered a relic of the past. But for Wang Chuanfu, it was the only way to survive. When he entered the market, established suppliers refused to take him seriously. They offered him low-quality parts at premium prices, thinking the battery king would eventually fail. Wang's reaction was legendary. He decided to build a forest of subsidiaries. If a supplier charged too much for a seat, he'd start a seat factory. If headlights were too expensive, he'd build his own light division. By 2010, BYD was making everything except the tires and the windshield glass. No, but the most daring move was hidden in a secret lab in Ningbo. While the world relied on European and American giants for automotive semiconductors, Wang poured billions into IGBT chips, the brains that manage high-voltage power. For years, investors called it a waste of money. That was until the global chip shortage of 2021. As factories in Detroit and Stuttgart ground to a halt, BYD's production lines never stopped. They had secured their own heart. They weren't just making cars, they had achieved silicon sovereignty. In 2008, the global financial system was in a state of absolute collapse. Lehman Brothers had vanished, and Wall Street was paralyzed by fear. But in Omaha, Nebraska, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger were looking at a small company in Shenzhen that most Americans had never heard of. Munger famously told Buffett, "We have to invest in Wang Chuanfu. This guy is a combination of Thomas Edison and Jack Welch." He saw a man who could solve any technical problem while managing a massive industrial empire. While the rest of the world was pulling money out of the market, Berkshire Hathaway poured $230 million into BYD. It was a move that shocked the automotive world. Buffett wasn't just buying stocks. He was buying a seat at the table for the future of energy. This single investment became the ultimate stamp of approval, transforming BYD from a local underdog into a global player that the giants could no longer ignore. But the Buffett effect didn't lead to instant glory. In fact, BYD was about to enter its most painful decade. From 2010 to 2019, the company became a favorite target for critics. Their early cars were mocked for being cheap copies with uninspired designs. While Tesla was becoming a high-tech fashion statement in Silicon Valley, BYD was struggling with reliability issues and a plummeting brand image in its own backyard. Industry experts dismissed them as subsidy hunters, claiming they only survived because of government support. The stock price stayed flat for years. But behind the scenes, Wang Chuanfu was doubling down on a vision that no one else believed in. He hired world-class designers and poured every cent of profit back into research and development. He knew that the electric revolution wouldn't be won by the most expensive toy, but by the company that could make EVs affordable, safe, and reliable for the masses. He was waiting for his moment. No. By 2020, the Achilles heel of the electric vehicle industry was clear: fire. High-profile reports of battery explosions were terrifying potential buyers and stalling the revolution. Wang knew that to win, he had to conquer fear itself. He walked onto a stage and introduced a game-changer, the Blade battery. To prove its safety, BYD performed the Mount Everest of battery tests, the nail penetration test. The results were terrifying for their competitors. When a steel nail was driven through a standard NCM battery, it erupted into a violent fireball, reaching temperatures over 500 degrees. But when the same nail pierced the Blade battery? Nothing. No smoke. No fire. The surface temperature barely reached 60 degrees. It was a masterclass in engineering. By reimagining the structure of the battery cell, BYD had created a fortress of energy. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. Safety wasn't an option anymore. It was a requirement. And BYD was the only one who had mastered it. While the Blade battery won the battle for safety, BYD's DMI technology won the war for the market. For decades, the internal combustion engine was a fortress held by German and Japanese giants. Chinese automakers were always playing catch-up, until the super hybrid era. The DMI technology was a technological Trojan horse. It offered the smooth, quiet drive of an electric car with the long-range convenience of a gasoline vehicle, all at a price that traditional gas cars couldn't compete with. For the average driver, the math finally made sense. By 2022, the gas killer had arrived. In China, the world's largest auto market, the best-selling cars were no longer Volkswagens or Toyotas, they were BYDs. Wang Chuanfu had done the impossible. He had made the gasoline engine look like a relic of the 19th century. The tide hadn't just turned, the old giants were being washed away by a wave they never saw coming. For decades, the flow of automotive power was one way, from the west to the east. But in 2023, the tide officially reversed. Massive BYD cargo ships, each carrying thousands of vehicles, began docked in European ports. At the Munich Auto Show, the very heart of German engineering, the crowd wasn't gathered around Mercedes or BMW. They were swarming the BYD booth. The giant from the east had arrived, not as a cheap alternative, but as a technological superior. From the streets of London to the highways of Southeast Asia, the world was witnessing something historic, the first truly global Chinese car brand. The world's largest EV maker wasn't from Silicon Valley, it was from Shenzhen. No. But Wang Chuanfu wasn't done. He wanted to prove that Chinese engineering could touch the sky. He launched Yangwang, a luxury brand designed to redefine what a car can do. With the E4 platform, the Yangwang U8 could do what seemed impossible: a 360-degree tank turn on solid ground, and even floating in water during emergencies. This wasn't just a gimmick, it was a demonstration of absolute motor control. While traditional luxury brands were still perfecting leather seats, BYD was perfecting four-independent motor torque vectoring. It was a message to the world: the era of following is over. The era of leading has begun. No. To understand Wang Chuanfu, you must realize he never wanted to just build cars. Cars were simply the most visible part of his three green dreams. His true vision is a complete energy ecosystem. Imagine a world where solar panels capture the sun's power, massive BYD energy storage stations hold that power, and electric vehicles move the world using that same clean energy. From bus fleets in Scandinavia to skyrail systems in South America, BYD is building the infrastructure of a post-oil world. It is the realization of a 20-year obsession to untether humanity from fossil fuels and secure a sustainable future for the next generation. No. From a broken workshop with 20 employees to a global empire employing nearly 1 million people. Wang Chuanfu's journey is more than a business success. It is a testament to the power of long-term thinking in a short-term world. He was laughed at in 1995, mocked in 2003, and written off in 2012. But he never blinked. Today, as BYD sits on the global throne, the lesson is clear: never bet against a man with a 20-year vision. Because while we are living in today, Wang Chuanfu is already living in 2045.